a big step. Think like a champion. Episode 2. If you want to understand today, you have to search yesterday. Pearl S. Buck. The more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know. I remember when a friend was studying history and he spent a long time on World War II. I mentioned that he must be an expert after the amount of time he'd spent on it, and he replied, "It only made me realize how much I didn't know." Because in order to understand World War II, you have to go back to WWI. So now I'm studying WWI, and I'm sure I'll have to go further back to understand how WWI came about. It will be a never-ending process. This guy was a real scholar, but he mentioned that studying history had made him very humble because he knew he'd never know it all no matter how much he studied. I always remember what this guy said, about learning how much he didn't know, and how every time you learn one thing, it leads to another thing and so on. He went on to become a highly respected historian, but I can assure you that he isn't resting on his many laurels. The humility that studying history has given him keeps him young and eager to learn more, no matter how erudite he is considered to be. He's a great example of remaining a student every day is another opportunity to learn something new. Sometimes we are so zealous to become successful that we forget about what is significant. The background for success should include some intrinsic values as well as monetary values. We should be aware of our culture and other cultures, our history, and their history. And we should not live in what has been termed a cultural vacuum. Someone once said that not knowing history was like being a leaf that didn't know it was part of a tree. That's an interesting visual and it applies to many people. We are individually responsible for our education, and that applies whether you're in school or not. If I sound tough on this subject, I am. I see no value whatsoever in believing ignorance to be an attribute. It isn't. It's good to start each day by saying to yourself, what can I learn today that I didn't know before? It opens you up to more information and net worth as an individual. Why live restricted lives due to lack of knowledge when there are so many resources available to us today? Another interesting aspect of history is that it will lead us to seeing that we are all a part of it. History isn't just in the past, it's happening now. How can you know what you're a part of if you don't know what it is to begin with? The world didn't start with your birth, and it won't end with your death either. That doesn't mean you're not a part of the scheme of things. To the contrary, it means that you are. Back to the leaf image. What if you know you are a leaf, but you're not sure what a tree is? I'd say the best thing to do is to find out what a tree is. It's pretty simple. It reminds me of an apprentice task that's enough of a challenge to set the apprentices out to discover and research some things before they jump into the task at hand. I was listening to some Europeans once and they seemed to agree that Americans didn't seem to know their roots. Of course, their roots go back for many more centuries than ours and may be easier to decipher because many of us have ancestors from different countries. But it gave me a reason to think about what they said, and I realized in many cases they were right. I recently went to Scotland, as my mother's side of the family is of Scottish ancestry, and I've spent time studying that country and therefore my heritage. It could even explain why I love golf so much. It originated in Scotland. I found that I enjoyed learning about Scotland and it has broadened my horizons as well as my interests as a businessman. I am building a golf course in Aberdeen, Scotland, that will be spectacular, and I very much enjoyed my visit and meeting the people from that culture and country. I also realized I still have a lot to learn, which will no doubt lead me into more interesting ventures as well as adventures. Take my advice and never be a know-it-all. First of all, it's impossible to know everything, and second of all, it's just no fun for you or anyone else. And third, you will be missing out on some great adventures. So, remember to think big by expanding your horizons at the same time you're expanding your net worth. That's what significant success is about. For what is the best choice, for each individual, is the highest it is possible for him to achieve. Aristotle. Think like a champion. Champions are born and champions are made. One definition of a champion is someone who shows marked superiority. Another definition is someone who is a winner of first prize or first place in competition. We've all heard of Olympic champions, and we've probably all seen a few on television. What comes to mind when I see their amazing ability is the amount of training they have endured, the sacrifices they've made, and the courage they've had to get where they are. Those are some of the attributes of a champion. They also wanted to achieve something special. Ordinary wouldn't be enough for someone who has the mindset of a champion. Champions think big. Champions work in a big-time way. Champions are focused. Champions are disciplined. Come to think of it, champions think like champions. As Jack Dempsey said, a champion is someone who gets up when he can't. Let's hope that applies to you. When I'm having an especially tough day, I often think it's like a race and I'd better have the endurance to get through it. Somehow the endurance will surface, because I don't want to wind up feeling beaten. Billie Jean King said, "Champions take responsibility. When the ball is coming over the net, you can be sure I want the ball." I understand what she was talking about, because I'm the same way in that respect. I have a box at the US Open every year because I love to watch those champions go at it. You can learn a lot from watching the experts, whether you're interested in sports, the arts, or whatever. One thing they all have in common is the same mindset: they want to win, they want to be the best. Not the runner-up, but the best. That's a very important thing to consider. I've seen very talented people fail because deep down I think they were afraid of winning. Winning comes with a responsibility. Champions rise to that responsibility. Search yourself carefully to make sure you're ready and capable. If you're not, do something about it. It's an important element of success. Most of you know that I'm a golfer. I've always said that golf is a brain game, which it is, but it is a demanding sport technically and is a game of finesse. You cannot play golf half-heartedly and expect to get anywhere with your game. You have to concentrate and you have to have patience. As the legendary golfer Bobby Jones said, it is nothing new or original to say that golf is played one stroke at a time. But it took me many years to realize it. We win in our daily lives by being careful with every day, by having a champion's view of each moment. Let's take a look at Aristotle's quote at the beginning of this essay. That is self-scrutiny at its highest. It really is the best choice to go for the highest achievement possible. Why set your goals too low? Did you ever hear a child saying they want to be nothing when they grow up? They are full of dreams and plans, and rarely are they mediocre aspirations. They want to be presidents, doctors, astronauts, scientists, and so on. They're on the right track and have the right mindset. If you need to, bring yourself back to when you had high achievement as a goal. Not everyone can be the world champion at something, but you can strive to be the best you can be. That's the first step and a daily responsibility. Champions go the extra mile. We all know when we've done just enough and when we've really exerted ourselves. Make an effort to exert yourself every day. Don't fail because you never allowed yourself to get started. Don't avoid success because you think the responsibility might be too much. Just focus and get going. You'd be surprised at what intelligent effort can produce. Alexander Graham Bell said something that I always remember: concentrate all your thoughts upon the work at hand. The sun's rays do not burn until brought to a focus. Pay attention to these things and you will be on your way to thinking like a champion and becoming one. Art is a lie which makes us see the truth. Pablo Picasso. I view my work as an art form. Picasso was not only a great artist, He was also a good businessman. He knew the value of his work and he didn't make excuses for it. He told a story once about someone who visited his studio, stood in front of a painting, and asked him, "What does it represent?" Picasso's response was, $200,000. He was telling the truth and in no uncertain terms. Picasso obviously viewed his art as a business, which it was. I view my business as an art, which it is. You should view your work that way, too. Here's why. Artists are known for their dedication to their ideals, to their muse whatever that might be, and for their perseverance in getting things just right. Those are admirable traits to possess. They will go to great lengths to achieve the desired result. In 2005, a Beethoven manuscript was discovered in a library, and he made so many changes and scratches on it that there were holes punctured through the pages in some places. This work was found to be done toward the end of his life, so he wasn't a novice at writing music at that point. That's just how he worked. He was a perfectionist who wouldn't settle for less than his best. He didn't need to impress anyone except himself. That's a good way to be, whether you're a business person or a musician. Compete with yourself to be the best you can be. That's the mindset of entrepreneurs. They know that competing with others might possibly lower their own standards. That may sound tough, but it's the truth. You have to have your own vision and stick with it. Picasso definitely had his own way of seeing things that certainly worked to his advantage, artistically and financially. Don't be afraid of being unique. It's like being afraid of your best self. Back to Picasso's statement about art being a lie. One take on that is that the arts very often make the difficult look effortless. How hard is it to put paint on a canvas? Easy if you don't know what you're doing. A little more complex if you do know what you're doing. In my first book, The Art of the Deal, I chose the title for those very reasons. Anyone in business knows that negotiating and making deals requires a lot of background work. People don't see me doing that part, but it doesn't mean I don't do it. For example, when people see the beautiful marble in Trump Tower, they see that it looks fantastic, but they usually have no idea what I went through personally to achieve the end result. No one cares about the blood, sweat, and tears that art or beauty can require. It's the end result that matters. Art is also representational. In other words, it's not life, but it's about life. It can point to truths that we might not notice in our busy daily lives. It gives us a reflection. When I do a deal, it's a reflection of my astuteness as a businessman. I strive for a comprehensive approach, much as an artist would. No matter what your field is, you can learn a lot by emulating that approach as much as possible. My work as a builder combines both craftsmanship and art, and I refuse to settle for less. I didn't have to use a rare marble when I built Trump Tower, but it would make a difference and I knew it. So, when I say I view my work as an art form, you can bet that I'm as meticulous as any artist is about their materials and the desired result. If you will do the same, I think you'll surprise yourself at how high your standards will become. Don't sell yourself short. Life is an art, business is an art, so be an artist and best yourself. I don't think much of a man who is not wiser today than he was yesterday. Abraham Lincoln. Experience teaches only the teachable. Aldous Huxley. Building connected thoughts. Comprehensive education dissolves the line between knowing too much and knowing too little on a variety of subjects that are necessary for success. I was reminded of this recently when I interviewed a young man who was very well versed in his field of expertise and almost uneducated in every other subject that was brought up. It was like he had tunnel vision, and although I admired his knowledge of his field, I had to realize that, considering the scope of my enterprises, He might not be a great fit because of his limited interests. This gave me the idea for this article, and I think it's something all of you should consider as you are furthering your education and/or entering your careers. Aldous Huxley, the great thinker and author of Brave New World, wrote an essay in 1959 titled Integrate Education that is still pertinent today. He emphasized the importance of building bridges in knowledge and thought, and the word he mentions for this is pontifex, or bridge builder. It's an interesting image to keep in mind as we study and learn. By doing so, we increase our learning capacity to include and connect ideas and subjects that may not specifically pertain to our area of interest, but that may serve us well to pay attention to. Oddly enough, as I was thinking of this situation, I was looking through the February 5, 2007, issue of Time magazine, which featured a letter written by Huxley in 1954. Under the heading of Classic Letter. This letter is so right on that it could be contemporary. It addresses the misinterpretations by critics and the press in their reviews, and while he admits their footnotes are snappy, he goes on to say that, snappiness, alas, is apt to be an inverse ratio to accuracy. This guy knew what he was talking about on a variety of levels and subjects, and whether you agree with him or not, his ideas are well presented. We've all heard the saying, connect the dots. I see it as having enough knowledge to be able to connect the dots in a reasonable and informed way. The young man I interviewed could not do this. I wasn't asking for an in-depth review of each topic presented, but an awareness of at least what the topic was. I've mentioned before the importance of keeping up with global events on a daily basis if you are planning to get anywhere in this world. Considering the availability of news, blind spots can't really be rationalized anymore, no matter where you might be living. Information is available to everyone, and if you aren't plugging into it, it will eventually work against you, maybe on your first interview. Don't learn this the hard way. Another tactic for being your own bridge builder is to visualize how much time is saved when you cross a bridge, versus fording a river or traversing a canyon. It's also a safeguard for falling into a gap that might take you weeks or months to get yourself out of. We are not omniscient, and sometimes things work out for a reason in a different way than we had planned, but take the time to prepare yourself for your goals. I work at that every single day. I've learned that things don't just automatically fall into line because I want them to. Be proactive in your pursuit of knowledge. As I write this, I remind myself that if you are reading it, you are most likely someone intent on improving your intelligence quota and someone who is already motivated. So, I want you to ask yourself, what is it that you are aiming for? What precisely is your motivation? What's the point of building a bridge if you're not sure you want to get to other side, or if you don't know what you'll do once you get there? A bridge must serve a specific purpose, and your goals have to be just that specific. Visualization is a powerful tool for bringing your intentions into focus. I was having a conversation a few years ago with a few people when one guy mentioned that the Trump name had become a famous brand around the world and then added, "What's in a name?" He then sorts of laughed and said to me, "In your case, a lot." I noticed that one guy seemed out of the loop about the quip. So, I said, "That's Shakespeare. What's in a name is a famous line from Shakespeare." So, he still looked perplexed and asked from what? And although I knew it was from Romeo and Juliet, I said, "Look it up. You might learn some interesting things along the way." I'm not proposing that you spend years studying Shakespeare, but a topical knowledge of certain things will greatly enhance your capabilities for dealing in the major leagues with people who are well educated in a variety of subjects. Don't be left out. Take a few hours a week to review the classics in literature or history or something outside of your usual range of interests. Limiting yourself is not the best choice. Many topics come up in the course of a business discussion or interview, and while we can't know everything, we should know as much as we can. Abraham Lincoln's statement at the beginning of this essay sums up what I'm trying to get across to you. It also incorporates Huxley's statement about being teachable. An added bonus to this attitude is that it will keep you young. Being a know-it-all will age you before your time, in addition to making you unteachable, so avoid those pitfalls. And building connected thoughts? Whoever thought that Abraham Lincoln and Aldous Huxley could be so connected? This essay proved that they could be, and we didn't need any dots to help us, just brain power and the attempt at building bridges between eras, cultures, backgrounds, and civilizations. Let that be an example of how to bridge your own gaps and to get yourself where you want to go. Creative thinking is a must these days. Make it work for you. Fear defeats more people than any other one thing in the world. Ralph Waldo Emerson. To ask the right question is already half the solution of a problem. Carl Jung. Confronting your fears. Recently, an interviewer asked me what my greatest fears were. I said I didn't have any. He seemed surprised, but this is how I see it: if you label something as a fear, then it creates fear when sometimes it's not a fear but a concern. For example, I know just as well as everyone else that New York City experienced a major terrorist attack, and the thought of that is a concern for all of us, because it affects all of us. It's happened in many places, so it's a worldwide concern. But if we let it become a firmly rooted fear, the terrorists will have won. The same applies to business. Do you fear owning a business? Translate that for yourself as asking, are you concerned about owning a business yourself? Why? What specifically are those concerns? It's much easier to break down a concern than it is a fear. Fear creates a block that will only hinder your creative thinking. Objectivity will remove that block and allow for creative ideas to flow. An antidote to fear is as simple as problem solving. Whether you have investing, estate planning, or running a business on your mind, or all of those things, they can be broken down into units of thought and dealt with in an orderly manner. It's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. You need to find the right place for each piece of the puzzle until the whole is apparent. When I began to construct Trump Tower, for example, I had several things in mind that I knew I wanted. I wanted a certain kind of marble called breccia perniche, which was expensive, beautiful, and rare. It was also irregular and had white spots and white veins, which bothered me, so I went to the quarry itself and marked off the best slabs with black tape. Action turned this concern into a problem solved. I got exactly the marble pieces I wanted, and sitting around worrying about whether those pieces would be right or wrong was getting me nowhere. As a result of deciding to go to the quarry myself, the pieces of this puzzle fell into place and the finished product was perfect. Know that if you want to own your own business, you will be doing a lot of the work yourself. That's just the way it is. It isn't all about giving orders or having other people do the legwork or brain work for you. That comes into the picture, but you should always be ready to go at it yourself. If that idea bothers you, maybe you'd be better off being an employee. If responsibility comes naturally to you, or if you enjoy that challenge, owning your own business is a good fit. Fear has a way of making things bigger than they are. There's an old German proverb to the effect that fear makes the wolf bigger than he is, and that is true. But the opposite of fear is faith, which is one reason you've got to believe in yourself and see yourself as victorious. You will know you are capable of dealing with any discouragements, bullies, or problems along the way. When I was faced with some huge debts in the early 1990s, it was widely reported that I was finished, done for, gone. Looking at the numbers alone made that seem clear to the media. However, I never believed I was finished. I simply saw that situation as a problem I had to solve and went about doing that. I'm not saying it was easy, because it wasn't. It was a big problem. But I refused to give in to fear or to believe what was being said about my so-called demise. I came back to become more successful than I ever was, and that's why I believe business is very much about problem solving. If you can learn to deal with and solve problems, you will have a much bigger margin for success. Do not allow fear to settle into place in any part of your life. It is a defeating attitude and a negative emotion. Recognize and zap it immediately. Replace it with a problem-solving attitude, faith in yourself, and hard work. Put that formula into working order for yourself and you'll be dealing from a position of power, not fear. That's winning. People with vision master the ability to see through to the heart of issues and investments. They value transparency. Robert Kiyosaki. Imagination, a key to financial savvy. I have the great advantage of having graduated from the Wharton School of Business, which is probably the best in the world. They made sure we were well versed in everything having to do with business. This is not always a guarantee of success, but at least we were well equipped for it. Having had this advantage, I will explain a few things for those who haven't. Finance and business are a complex mix of components that embraces a large spectrum of enterprises. It's like having a technique and then being able to apply it to different mediums. As a builder, I instinctively saw the different aspects of finance fitting and falling into place in a large blueprint, and as I learned more, those blueprints became larger and larger. When I look back, I realize I was thinking big way back in school. This might sound simplistic, but I'm a firm believer in visualization, and it worked for me. A blueprint might not work for you, but they are something I was familiar with. It might be a Miro painting or some other design or sculpture that works for you. I've heard some interesting stories of what people visualized on their path to success. One person used a photograph of bread and salt as his inspiration, and he became vastly successful. To each his own on this one. Some financial courses are dry but necessary. I was able to handle them by making them more interesting in my own mind by applying the principles immediately to some imaginary project I would come up with. By doing this, I was already working in the real world while I was in school, which I think saved me a lot of time when I actually got started on my own. I had been multitasking before I knew what multitasking was. In reviewing my career, I think this aspect of my approach, on top of having the foundation of great schooling, is largely responsible for my success. I didn't realize I was doing it until much later, when I would somehow know how things worked or where things went in the big picture of any project I might be considering or actively involved in. I had already been working on it years before, and while I still encountered problems, things would somehow fall into place as they should. It's one way of being prepared. A lot of people have imagination, but it doesn't help them because they can't execute. I'm able to execute with the imagination. Make sure your foundation is there to begin with and then grow from there in your imagination. That's how vision and transparency work together and results can be remarkable. Everyone who got where he is has had to begin where he was. Robert Louis Stevenson. Is business success a natural talent? A lot of people think I'm a natural at business. In some ways they might be right, but it's also an acquired skill that takes discipline and focus, just as being an athlete or a musician takes perseverance and years of training. Before I decided to go to the Wharton School of Finance, I had thought about attending the University of Southern California to study film, but once I decided on Wharton, I was a very serious and focused business student. There's a certain amount of bravado in what I do these days, and part of that bravado is to make it look easy. That's why I've often referred to business as being an art. I've always liked Andy Warhol's statement that, making money is art and working is art and good business is the best art. I agree. I received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in January of 2007, which was a big surprise for someone who opted for Wharton and real estate as a career. Did I have a natural talent for the entertainment industry? Maybe, but I've also always paid attention to it. I understand how it operates, and I'm always learning. When I was in school, I always did more than was expected and studied on my own in addition to what was required. I've noticed that a lot of very successful people have done the same thing, no matter what their respective fields might be. Winston Churchill was known for being a great orator. And I remember thinking he must have been born with this talent until I read about him and discovered he spent a great deal of time developing this skill. It wasn't just a natural ability, he worked at it constantly. His talent was the result of deliberate and focused work. Mozart studied music at an unusually early age, and his aptitude was obviously there, but that aptitude was carefully developed. The natural ability I may have as a businessman is being able to see the big picture while I'm taking care of a lot of details. I can focus on a few things at once at this point and find them working themselves out. That comes with experience, but I remember making a deliberate attempt to assimilate as much as possible at all times, even back in school. Some people are visionaries. Bill Gates is an example, as is Mark Burnett, but they are also very good businessmen. So where does talent come in? Some people just seem to have an edge for what they do, like Tiger Woods or Roger Federer in sports. There are prodigies, it seems, but under close scrutiny all prodigies were carefully trained. I think talent has to do with aptitude for what you are doing. Some people are simply doing the wrong thing, and when they find the right thing, they become successful. Working hard and working intelligently should go together. Heredity and environment are two factors that I consider seriously, from personal experience. My father was a great example. He was in the construction and real estate industry, and I saw firsthand what it took to succeed. I had no delusions of it being an easy or glamorous path. I chose to make it more glamorous because my tastes went toward that aesthetic. I consider myself very fortunate to have had this education from my father from an early age. I believe it gave me a great advantage, and I often say that I'm a member of the Lucky Sperm Club. But did it give me a natural talent? I don't think so. It gave me an advantage that I deliberately chose to develop into an advantage. You can be around something and either have no interest or aptitude for it, so it wouldn't be of any help to you. My elder brother had no interest in real estate and decided to do something else. I had a friend who worked on Wall Street because everyone in his family did, but he was a disaster. All the familiar indications were there for his success, but he wasn't suited for it, and not until he left and did something else did he become successful. When I started to develop golf courses, I had a lot to learn. I loved the game and knew golf courses as a player, but developing a golf course is another story. I consulted with the world's experts before I started out. My golf courses have won awards for their beauty, but it wasn't a natural talent I had as a developer. My advantage is that I had a passion for the game and wanted the most beautiful courses possible to be realized. There has been research done on cross-training your brain, and they mention how you can transfer the skills developed to enhance your performance in other areas. That's one reason I have always encouraged people to golf. It's a brain game and it works on several levels. I've gotten a lot of great ideas and solutions to problems during a golf game, so I readily endorse this theory. It works. It might be painting or playing the piano that works for you, but it gives credibility to the developing of a hobby or outside interest that will complement your business bent. I've also come to believe in luck. I've known people who have worked hard and done everything to succeed, and yet it just doesn't seem to happen for them. I'm not sure what the concrete reasons might be, but it makes me believe in luck to a certain extent. It's also true that not everyone can be wildly successful. Maybe it's just a balance in the world that we can't always control. But I've noticed that it helps to believe you're lucky, because luck will seem to favor you. Business is about creativity. That's where the art part comes in. Every industry has its leaders, and if I'm known in real estate, it is because I approach my work cognitively as well as creatively. Peter Gelb, the general manager at the Metropolitan Opera, is really putting the opera back on the map by applying contemporary marketing ideas to this venerable institution. He is promoting it in ways that today's market can absorb and appreciate. You have to be alert for ways of revitalizing the old and creating the new, or combining them, to achieve the best results. It was decades ago that I bought the deserted rail yards along the Hudson River, and today Trump Place is nearing completion. 18 beautiful buildings, a park, and a pier that have enhanced Manhattan's West Side. Sometimes people think things just happen overnight, but that's not always the case, even if you are well known and well established. Success is often a matter of patience, and patience can be developed if you don't have it naturally. In summation, is business success a natural talent? I think it's a combination of aptitude, work, and luck. He who will not economize will have to agonize. Confucius. Keep it short, fast, and direct. When Confucius mentions agonize in his quote, I have to tell you that I can relate. As someone on the receiving end of conversations with people who do not know how to edit themselves, I can understand what agony means. I don't mean to be impolite, but I am often thinking to myself, how long is it going to take for this person to get to the point? We could have flown to Australia by now and they're still in the middle of takeoff. Business is no place for stream of consciousness babbling, no matter how colorful you might think you're being. Whatever you're doing, keep it short, fast, and direct. It's also more polite. Most people don't have time to waste. I realize that Confucius was referring to the non-economizer, and they will suffer, too, but why make everyone miserable by being unnecessarily chatty? I mentioned in my book Think Like a Billionaire that Ricardo Bellino had exactly 3 minutes to give me his business presentation. I was extremely busy that day and not particularly in the mood for a presentation, so I thought he might decline, which would free up my day a bit. Not only did he not decline, he gave me such a great presentation within those 3 minutes that we did a deal together. It's surprising what people can do with a deadline. I mention that because sometimes we have to give ourselves deadlines. Practice giving your presentation in under 5 minutes. Practice giving your introduction in less than 3 minutes. You will discover that you can be an effective editor by cutting out everything that isn't absolutely necessary. Your audience, or your superiors, will be grateful for your ability to distill the essence for them. We probably all know what it's like to receive junk mail. Sometimes there are piles of it waiting for us, and we have to sort through it all to get to the important stuff. Don't offer any junk mail to anyone, just give them the good stuff, or the necessary items. That can get you places far faster than you can imagine. In that sense, business is often like a relay race. To have a tight team, a winning team, you can't have someone who lags behind, because everyone will suffer because of it. Make sure you're not the one who holds things up for everyone. Learn to sprint when it comes to being clear. Have a contest with yourself by asking, how concise can I possibly be? Then best yourself every time. Get to the essence immediately. Someone who analyzed my negotiating technique said I had an advantage over most people because I had the ability to get to the point faster than anybody else. While they were still formulating their sentences, I'd already written the book. I already had the deal done in my head. That ability didn't happen overnight, I've worked at it for a long time. But we can all put that technique to work every day, whether it's relaying a message to someone, writing a letter, or ordering lunch. Those of you who have watched The Apprentice will notice that the candidates who can present the facts with the least amount of verbal decoration will have an advantage. Listening to a 5 minutes explanation that can be easily edited to 30 seconds automatically sends a red alert to me and my advisors. We don't have the time for loquacious colleagues, and the long-winded diatribes we often have to suffer through will greatly diminish their chances of winning. Simple as it sounds, there is great wisdom in the short, fast, and direct route. Knowing where you're going in your conversation and demonstrating to others you know where you're going by being concise, is a big step toward leadership and respect. Hone these skills in every situation and with every opportunity you have, whether you're in line at the corner deli or in the boardroom on The Apprentice. Learn to economize. People appreciate brevity in today's world. Thank you for your support our channel. Please help subscribe to get more benefit video.